Hey guys, and welcome back to the FFP. Today we're going to break down for you, we haven't quite decided on the title, but I guess real or mirage, like are these studs really going to turn out to be duds? At this point in the season, we're enough games in where we've seen some players really surprise us. They've been impressive, they've been nice to watch, but the question you have to begin to ask yourself is, can they continue at this pace? Is this something that they're going to finish the whole year like this, and they're a very legitimate option for you to take you in and to win your championship? Or do you need to sell high on these guys? That's really the question that we're going to be asking today. Each one of us have picked out 3 players and broken down, just a little evaluation for you guys, and hopefully that will help you and make your determination on whether or not you're going to stick with these guys throughout the entirety of the year, because it's really about that time to start making trades, I would say. I don't know if that's just me, but I've been really starting to look at moves in my leagues. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think understanding the trends is really key. Whether you're looking at trading, like you said, and trading key is selling high, buying low, or maybe trying to determine waiver wire priority, or maybe it's just a matter of simply trying to figure out, can this guy sustain production, or do I need to look to get a viable option on the bench or a handcuff because I expect a fall off in his stats? But you need to know trends. It's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's week 4, so you know exactly where your team's at. You know exactly what you have to do. If you're a good fantasy football manager and you have to make the moves on cutting some players that maybe you were in on them all in this season, or you have to go and get guys who maybe aren't doing so well on other rosters. So this is an opportunity for us to give you some advice on maybe what those players should be.
All right, well, let's get into it. We'll take turns. We'll start off with you, Connor. Why don't we get into our first player?
Yeah, so the first player that we're going to look at as we're talking about real or mirage, it's not actually what I would say has been a stud so far, and that's Antonio Gibson. I think that he's been a massive disappointment as the number 20 overall fantasy football running back, especially with his draft capital. That some were picking him at the end of the first round, early second for sure. And he was supposed to have a huge sophomore season. All reports were saying that that the coaching staff was going to use him as the next Christian McCaffrey. Him coming out and saying he feels so much more comfortable as a running back in a year that he had already finished as an RB1.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's came out and he has 253 yards through 4 games, 8 catches for 107 yards. Remember, one of those catches was a 73-yard touchdown. So that's a little deceiving as well. And I thought, first game happens, right? And Fitzmagic goes down with an injury, and Taylor Heineke comes in, and he had already had 23 touches in this first game, and I thought, man, it's going to be Antonio Gibson season. Get ready, gear up for what's going to be a great year. And no, Taylor Heineke takes the helm, and all of a sudden they decide that they're going to go away from what seemed like a potent running attack. Again, I'm not a football coach, but it just doesn't seem to be like they want to use him there.
Yeah, it's confusing for me. Again, great rookie year. Comes into this season. He's been a big disappointment. But one thing I do is ask you to check your perspective at the door, what you really expected from him. Personally, I think most people drafted him to be a high-end RB2. Would I not say that's probably a right evaluation of what most people expected from this season? And at running back 20th overall, that just makes him a middle to low-end RB2. Like, he's not that far off. So, one, don't over-panic on this guy. But, yeah, there's certainly been, and I think what it really is J.D. McKissic. And that's what's scaring people.
Not just J.D. McKissic. I am panicking. I'm over-panicking. I have shares of Antonio Gibson in a lot of fantasy leagues right now. So I look back at last year, his explosive rookie season. Mm-hmm. He did not have more than 2 games over a 60+% snap share. Okay, and in this season so far, he only has 1 game over a 60% snap share. That was the first game at 61%. Ever since, every single game he's had less and less. And some of that could be that there's a hampering injury there that he's dealing with. But this is a scary fact. Heineke in 3 games has 20 carries.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson in 4 has 59 carries. So Heineke has 1/3 of the amount of carries that are RB1, borderline RB2, has had this year. And last year, if you look, it's a little deceiving because he had 11 touchdowns. He was touchdown dependent. Now, everyone thought the volume would take place this year, so it really didn't matter. It would overweigh the touchdowns, but he doesn't have them. He doesn't have them this year, and they're using him less and less to use Heineke and McKissic, like you said.
I think looking back to last year, his average draft position was 12. So in your standard 12-team league, that makes him an RB1.
Okay, so just
right there in the borderline, yeah. One, I think he's going to rebound. Maybe that's wishful thinking because I own him. I think you own him in a league, don't you?
I do, yeah.
But I think one of the things that's hurting him is not something that's necessarily directly his fault. and that's that defense.
Yeah.
That defense came in the league to be one of the top young upcoming defense, but they have been brutal, which means they're playing from behind. So he's getting games scripted out. So you can't keep feeding this guy when you're always having to throw the ball. I would think that the defense is going to rebound. They've got talent there, and if that defense can rebound and they get lower scoring again, they can begin to feed him more. I think you'll see an uptick. That's why McKissick's in there on passing downs, and probably why Tyler Heineke is getting so many carries. It's scrambling, or the defense is dropping back and they're in pass coverage. So I think that his production is directly tied to that defense.
Mm-hmm. And it's a defense that's young and talented. They will get better. They clearly have some coaching things that they need to work through, a little maturity. That's really what we've seen from that defense.
Well, here's the news, is that he can't get any worse, I don't think. I don't think that it can get worse from here. His value has already tanked, so if you sell him, you're not going to get a whole lot back for him as far as what you paid for him. Mm-hmm. And I think that the reality that we have to start living with is that he's a mid to low end RB2 this year with a high ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. So that ceiling's always going to be there for touchdown production, and he could turn it on and have a Thanksgiving Day like he did last year against Dallas, where he had 3 touchdowns. But with people who had high hopes of him being this sure spot, I don't think he's going to turn it around from there. I think this is going to be his realistic production and be touchdown dependent RB2.
Yeah, one more thing that I think for me gives me hope for him is that, there's things that we don't see. We're not the coaches. We're not there watching these guys play. A lot of the information is not given to us. But I think really telling the fact that in the offseason, they didn't really go out and grab another guy.
Yeah.
They didn't go out and draft a guy. And so you tell that organization feels very comfortable being their lead back, their horse moving forward. Mm-hmm. And so if they're comfortable with the guy to some degree, I think he's got a pretty solid role. Whether or not he can break that top 12, I'm not sure. But at the running back position, let's be honest with you, who's out there?
Yeah.
Who's got that third running back on your bench that you can sit this guy? Probably not. At least I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be playing him for a couple more weeks. I hope he gets better.
Yeah, that's all we can do.
All right, so the first guy that I want to break down is Adam Thielen. Now, as of right now, he is the wide receiver 11 in fantasy PPR scoring. And for me, I'll put this out in the upfront, and then I'll defend it. I think this is a mirage. I do not think that Adam Thielen is going to finish as a wide receiver 1. But that's just my pick. I know there's some bold opinions on that, but let me give you my breakdown, and then I'll let you guys hop in for some of this. First off, he's a wide receiver 11 despite being 23rd in targets. That means he's very efficient when he's getting the ball thrown his way. And while that's great, we know he's a good wide receiver. Insane amounts of efficiency they're hard to keep up. Not only that, he's got 4 touchdowns, and that's what's really carried his fantasy production. That's basically, it's a touchdown a game so far. In fact, that's second to only Cooper Kupp with 5. And so we've talked about this before on the channel. I know you guys get this. You can't rely on a touchdown every single week. In fact, on this pace, he's going to finish with 17 touchdowns on the year. Not such a bold opinion here. I don't think he's going to finish with 17 on the year. That would be really surprising. But there are even some more things. I wanted to look at it. Do I really think that he can even keep up what he has been doing? So I started looking into some metrics. I don't want to dig super deep into it. But I found this. He has 3.3 average yards of separation from his defender when he catches the ball. That is actually more than average. Other guys like Cooper Kupp or Mike Williams this year are averaging closer to 2 and 2.5 yards of separation. Now, Adam Thielen is a great route runner, and he is always going to be a guy to get separation. But defenses are going to key in on that. He's not always going to have 3.5 yards, and that's going to hurt his production as well. And finally, you just take a look at that Vikings team as a whole. He could very well see a dip in volume. Again, he's already not been the most volume receiver, but he's, really, Jefferson is the one there. He's shown that this year. He's been phenomenal. And then they've got a really good running back in Dalvin Cook who can do both. They've got a great RB2. They've got even a third wide receiver there in KJ Osborne, who is more than productive at their wide receiver 3. Even Conklin had a good game. And if their defense starts to play better, they can run the ball more and throw the ball less. So, I've got a lot of concerns for Adam Thielen. I think he's a good wide receiver. He will finish as a low-end wide receiver 2. At least that's my prediction. So I'm going to call him a bit of a mirage. Nothing major. You don't need to, completely throw the baby out with the bathwater on this, but I expect his production to dip. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll tack in another thing against Adam Thielen is that for that separation to get that and being a polished route runner as he is, it takes time to get open on his routes. And Kirk Cousins often doesn't have that time. If you watch any of the Vikings game, he's not good at navigating the pocket as it is, and he doesn't have much time to do so. So for those routes that he's getting so open on, they're just not materializing in time that Kirk Cousins can get him the ball. But I will say this. this is a pretty common theme that we've gotten from Adam Thielen over his career. He's uber efficient, always has been. Last year finished as number 10 fantasy wide receiver on only 108 targets. That's the fewest targets for a top 10 receiver. Even less than A.J. Brown, who we always remark is one of the most efficient wide receivers. So although I'm with you on the Mirage and I want to trade him for as much as I can get from the value because he's always underdrafted, we always take him, end of the 4th round, early 5th round for most drafts. Yes, I'm down for trading him, but I do think that he can keep up a similar pace. And I'd say that he finished a little higher than a low-end wide receiver too. But if you can get more for him, I want to do that.
Yeah, my biggest concern right now is Osborne, for example, is a good number 3 wide receiver there. But I think probably the number one concern is some would say, well, 17 touchdowns is not far from what he did last year, and he did it last year, so why not repeat that? Last year, that Vikings defense was uncharacteristically bad. And Mike Zimmer is a defensive guru. Started this year bad, but I tell you what, they're beginning to right that ship. Things are getting better, and they're making adjustments. And I think a big thing that's helping them right now is Daniel Hunter coming back. He is one of the top 5 defensive linemen in football, and he made pressure on the quarterback. I think that defense continues to improve. They don't want Kirk Cousins having to throw the ball, 40, 45 times a game. At least if they can avoid that, they're going to try to. And so I do worry about the volume. I have nothing against him as a wide receiver, talent-wise. I just think that situation, like you said, Jefferson's the number 1 guy there. So I do have a little bit of concern. So I would probably, if you're looking to trade, I would sell high now.
Yeah.
The one thing that is a little bit confusing, maybe you looked into this, though, is I have noticed that he's up there because of the touchdowns, but his yardage totals are really low right now. And I don't know, he's getting the separation according to what you're saying, but he's not getting the ball deep. I know depth of target is just not there.
Yeah, they're certainly having, and that's exactly what you had hit on. That Vikings offensive line, not as bad as it has been, but it's really not that great. And teams have already known for years now that you go after the quarterback, you take advantage of that poor offensive line. So, of course, they're having him run short routes, because if he runs a fly route, Kirk Cousins doesn't have the time. So you're going to have him run a slant route, and that's great, but that's going to hurt your fantasy value as well. I mean, look at some of the most productive fantasy receivers this year, like the dominance that we've seen from Tyler Lockett before his injury. Like, that's in making those big plays. Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp or any one of those guys. But, yeah, so for me, guys, I think it's a bit of a mirage. Like I said, don't throw the baby out the bathwater. He's still going to have a good year, but I wonder if there's going to be a drop-off. But let's move on to our next guy.
So the guy that I have is Cordarrelle Patterson. I know a lot of you are going to hate me. Go for it. I get it. Whatever. And if I'm wrong at the end of the year, I'll admit I'm wrong. Right now, I'm a guy that a couple weeks ago I did say I don't see his trend continuing. You know what? Surprisingly, he's continued to do really well. He's currently 3rd right now in fantasy points among running backs and 5th amongst wide receivers. That is insanity. That is so high. It's crazy, right? So does he finish maybe as a top 12, either as a running back, an RB1, or wide receiver? Let's be honest right now, even if he finished as a running back 2 or wide receiver 2, if you told me that at the beginning of the year, I thought you were crazy, right? So even if he finishes there, that's an amazing finish. Now, I will say this right now, because he started so strong and he's got a lot of stats already built up, that I think that he's certainly going to finish somewhat in that realm of at least at a wide receiver 3 or running back 3 at this point. Now, he's had a strong start, and I would say that start is what I would call maybe a little bit of a need-based or volume-based.
Yeah.
In fact, they've been playing from behind, but it's not just volume. This guy's actually been effective, and he's been efficient. He's got 4.4 yards per carry. It's not bad at all. You look at his quarterback rating when thrown to his QBR is 134. So he's doing a great job there. He's got 0 dropped balls. Now some say, wait, he's been targeted. He doesn't have all those catches. They differentiate between a target versus a catchable ball, and he's dropped 0 catchable balls. He's on pace currently for 477 rushing yards, 72 catches, and 941 receiving yards for a total of 1,418 yards and 20 touchdowns. That is crazy. But I would say this, those combined rushing and receiving yards aren't necessarily insane. I mean, a lot of players have done that.
Yeah.
But I think we'd all admit that he's not going to get 20 touchdowns, right? Do you agree with that?
No, yeah, that's... No, I agree.
Yeah, he's just not going to hit 20 touchdowns, okay? Or, I don't know, I'd make some crazy bet. I'll get a tattoo or something whatever that happens. So he's not going to continue that. Now, those numbers aren't insane per se, but here's what I would say. This week, he will continue at least one more week. Wherever you're at with him, he's got at least one more good week there. One, Ridley is not traveling with the team to London. He's got personal issues. And Gage is not back. He's still hurt. So at least this weekend, I think he's got one more huge weekend ahead of him there. But what could change that would possibly cause him to lose that production? Because that's the big question. Does he maintain or lose it? One, there'll be a few players that are going to return. Gage will come back. Ridley's going to miss this week, but when he does come back, he's a stud wide receiver and a favorite target of Ryan there. Another thing that could possibly change that production is I think the development of younger players in that offense and time to rebuild. I don't know about you guys. I know the Falcons have played better the last couple of weeks, but I think this is a rebuilding year for them. Did you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in a couple of weeks, it's going to become evident to everybody that they're rebuilding. So as they begin to rebuild, they're going to have to develop younger players, look to the future. And he's 30 years old. Now, in the world term, that's not old, but in football terms, 30 years old is pretty old. And I think he signed to a one-year contract. So as the year drags on, they'll look to the future, give younger players the opportunity to develop, give the coaching staff an opportunity to evaluate them for the future, and his role will decrease. Another thing, Kyle Pitts. That guy's going to be a stud. And so you know his production is going to go up along with Ridley. Somebody's going to have to lose some of those touches, and I think he would be that guy. Another thing I also think with him is I still think he's going to get traded to a contender. I wouldn't be all that surprised the next couple of weeks if he gets traded. He'd be a great addition to a team that's looking to go to the Super Bowl or the postseason. He can return kicks. He can use as a back or a running back. He's a nice tool to have for a coach. But here's the thing. If he goes to a contender, okay, that contender already has an RB1 or wide receiver 1. If they don't, they're not in contention. At least they're not going to be for long. So whatever team he goes to, he's not going to get that same volume. So for me, there's no way this guy's going to finish as a wide receiver 1 or an RB1. You can take that to the bank. But I do think his nice start, okay, statistical nice start, is going to leave him okay there. And one more thing, too. There's a reason why this guy has played on 5 teams in 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay, there just is. I'm not saying he doesn't have talent there, but I do think there'll be a fall in production. My money is that this guy will finish outside the top 24 in running back and wide receiver. He'll probably fall in, I believe, the range of maybe wide receiver 3, running back 3 statistics. I would sell high right now or temper your expectations moving forward. Once again, I think this weekend he's going to be good, but I do think because of the reasons I listed, he will have a drop off. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, well, if you remember my first video, who was my favorite buy low?
Patterson.
Cordarrelle Patterson. All right, now he's my favorite sell high. And it's not because of anything that he did wrong, but just for all the reasons that you just listed. He's not going to continue this production by any means. No one expected him to be a top 5 running back and a top 10 wide receiver. And now last week you could trade basically nothing and obtain him and play him at your flex. I'd still be happy playing him at my flex most of the season if he stays at Atlanta. But now you can trade him for a player of actual value. And Antonio Gibson, like we just talked about. I don't know if anyone will take that trade, but it's worth throwing out there.
Or use them as multiple chips packaged together.
Yes. Now, just adding on to the reasons that you talked about, he hasn't gotten over 42% of the snap share this year. That's just craziness. And he's scored a touchdown on almost 25% of his catches.
Yeah.
Again, things that can't happen. Now, as far as the rebuilding thing that you talked about, well, Mike Davis is also 28, so there's not much to prove there. They don't have a running back under 28 years old, I believe. The other one would be Caleb Huntley, who's on the practice squad right now. They'd have to pull him up. And then they signed Wayne Gallman, who hasn't gotten much run, but he's 26, so he doesn't have much to prove there either. So I think Cordarrelle Patterson can be a usable player. I think that he can be a weekly flex player, but if you can sell him at the value of an RB1 and get back maybe an underperformer like we've talked about in the past, that's why I change my mind all the time. So he was a buy low for me, right? And I wanted him, and I would have been thrilled to play him and get him in every league this week because it paid off, right? But now I'm going to go flip him for another asset that, will make your team better in the long run because this isn't going to last all season.
Especially if you're in a dynasty league.
Oh, especially if you're in a dynasty league.
People will trade him, but yeah, you're right.
Let's put it this way. Do you guys remember who the cover of Madden 12 was?
No, I don't have a clue.
A running back by the name of Peyton Hillis, who went over 1,000 yards. He was the top running back. I'm here to tell you, every time a player has a couple of good games or even a good season, we begin to think maybe he's the next Zeke or Christian McCaffrey, right? Maybe he's going to continue on. It doesn't always last for everyone. We forget the Peyton Hillises, and we remember the guys who have the long, great careers. Like, as unfortunate as it is, you can have all the great stats that you want. You have to answer me the question, how do I know it's going to continue? And for Patterson, for me, I have no way to know that it's going to continue. But again, that comes really mostly on the basis of him being a guy who's bounced around the league for years. And finally, he's found a place that's worked for him. But we'll see for how long,
All right, the next guy we're going to talk about is QB Sam Darnold. He's the number 5 quarterback in leagues right now. He's having a great year in his first year with the Carolina Panthers, following 3 injury-plagued and turnover-prone seasons with the Jets. And a lot of people are saying that was more of a Jets problem than a Sam Darnold problem, because he came into the league at 21 years old. He was supposed to be under Gase and his quarterback guru, getting him to where he needs to be, and it didn't happen. He never had a season above number 25, and that was his rookie year, so he was even worse since then, and Jets traded him for pennies on the dime just to get him out of there. And now, like we said, he's surrounded with Matt Rule, who's an offensive guru. He's been a great coach in his first 2 years. He's surrounded with Christian McCaffrey, arguably the best running back in the league.
Not right now, but
yeah,
not.
Yeah. I mean, Derrick Henry is obviously it right now, but Christian McCaffrey when
I just meant because he's hurt.
Because he's hurt, yeah. When he's healthy, he's the best. And then you have Robbie Anderson, who's a great number 2 option. DJ Moore, who's a star, an underrated star at the wide receiver position. A young tight end. I would have liked Dan Arnold to stay there, but Tommy Tremble is a fine replacement. They like drawing things up for him. Now, for most people, he went undrafted outside of Superflex, and he was just a waiver wire pickup. And I would say the same thing for Daniel Jones, Taylor Heineke, for David Carr, any of those players who are doing well right now. It's a mirage. I would sell them. You might have a different opinion on Daniel Jones, but I think that this is an obvious mirage, and I would be trying to trade him, especially inside the QB position, where there's so much depth. I mean, you can really basically plug and play anyone on the waivers and get a serviceable fantasy stat line, where if I can, and I've already drafted a top 10 quarterback and never expected to have Darnold, that I'm trading him to get any value I can outside of it. And some of the stats behind that is that he has unsustainable rushing touchdown production. He's the next Cam Newton there, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he has 5 touchdowns, and he's averaging 2.6 yards per carry. Mm-hmm. So 5 touchdowns. You take away those 5 rushing touchdowns that he has, and remember, in his first 3 years in the league, he only had 4 combined. So he has 5 in 1 year and 4 games. That's not going to keep happening. You take that out, he'd have only scored 68 total fantasy points this year. He'd be the number 21 fantasy quarterback. He'd be right next to Jameis Winston and Carson Wentz. And we wouldn't be having this discussion. Mm-hmm. Now, keep in mind, he's also played the Jets, the Texans, and the Cowboys. And the Jets are doing pretty good under Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. But the Texans are ranked 26th in pass defense, mm-hmm. and Dallas is ranked 29th against the pass. So, I mean, he's played bad defensive teams. He's had great stat lines in what probably shouldn't have been competitive games, but they were. Mm-hmm. And I want out of Sam Darnold.
Okay. I get that. And, the bright thing is, nice thing is if he does have that dip, like you didn't draft him early, so you're not really tied to him. I don't know. I can see a world where he continues it, mm-hmm. right? Where they get to the goal line and suddenly Darnold's got the ball and linebackers and corner, they start stepping up, and that just creates open room for the receivers. Like, I could see that. I totally get your concern. He's not going to finish the year with a rushing touchdown per game. He's not going to. But, and we talked about this, a lot in the offseason, where it was like, man, he is finally getting away from Adam Gase. Have you seen all this stuff about Adam Gase leaves his high school, they win the national championship. He leaves his football team, they go to I don't know what it was, the Rose Bowl, whatever. They go 13-0 or something. Then he leaves Denver and they win the Super Bowl. And then he leaves Sam Darnold and Ryan Tannehill. Suddenly they're great quarterbacks. He has got the best O-line, the best receivers, the best running backs, the best team, the best coaches, the best anything he's ever had. I tend to think it's real. But you're absolutely right on the rushing touchdowns. The question is, can he replace that with passing touchdowns down the road? Mm-hmm. That's something you got to be nervous about. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, so I think that he got a bad rap there. I think it was the Jets since Adam Gase, so let's just wipe that off there. I think he's going to be a quality quarterback in the league, but right now I think he's top 5 as far as quarterback points in fantasy. Mm-hmm. That's not going to continue. Yeah. I also think he needs a few more weapons there. Now, getting Christian McCaffrey back, he's a phenomenal pass-catching back, not only the best in the league now, but probably the greatest ever. Yeah. That will help. But I think he needs a better number 2 guy. Robbie Anderson's right now not the guy there. I think you'll see a drop. You brought up great points, which is he had some nice matchups.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that you can definitely trust week to week in the right matchups of a streaming quarterback. Yeah. But no, would I want to trust him every week at this point? No, I wouldn't. Mm-hmm. But don't let what he did for the Jets worry you if you need to start him in the right matchup, or if you're short a guy or a bye or you have an injury. I think in that regard he can be used.
Yeah.
100%.
And I want to agree with that and touch on it because I thought about that as well. So I looked up his playoff matchups. If you are lucky enough to make the fantasy football playoffs, well, his 4-week schedule is against Buffalo, who is the best against the pass, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and then Tampa Bay. So I think Tampa Bay around that time is going to be playing their best defensive football. And I know that they've given up a lot of yardage, but they're a good defense. I don't want to face them, and they're going to see him twice in 4 weeks. Usually defense have the better side of that. And again, like the streaming that you said, if you want to keep him on your bench all year and kind of try and mix and match your starts with another quarterback, by all means do it. But this is about getting your team better. If you have no need for him and you have another quarterback that's serviceable in your lineup, I'm going out and trading him for whatever I can at his top value, which is right now.
The one thing that we always say here, though, and I agree with you, but I never leave dead weight on my bench, and we say never overvalue quarterbacks. There's always somebody out there, and so if that was me, as much as I like to keep it, like I just couldn't, I dropped the guy because I'd rather have a possible running back with potential or wide receiver. So I think you could, but I wouldn't advise it. But I think I agree with you. I think you did a great job breaking that down.
All right, guys, let's break it down now. I want to talk about Daniel Jones. You just hit on a quarterback, so let's talk about another one of those guys who's having a surprisingly good year. Right now, he's currently 8th in fantasy quarterback scoring. That is in stark contrast to just the previous year where he finished 24th in fantasy quarterback scoring. So, what are we really seeing from Daniel Jones? He is, this is his 3rd year in the league, and feels like this dude is bipolar. Year 1, he comes out, he was on pace for 32 total touchdowns, didn't play the whole season, but the games he did play in, he was good. In fact, he was on pace to finish 6th among quarterbacks in fantasy scoring. He was very effective. And then his 2nd year, he's just plain awful. There's no other way to get around it. He threw just 11 touchdown passes that year, and he really stinks. So for me, we kind of talked in this offseason that maybe we might have some hope for him. We were excited to see if he could turn it around, but we also knew that was far from a guarantee. So we get into this season, and he's played pretty good. Now, what we're looking at right now is let's just break down the stats. It gets a little boring, but let's get into some numbers. Yeah. One, according to Pro Football Focus, behind Tom Brady, he's got the 2nd highest Pro Football Focus passing grade. The only guy better than him is Tom Brady, which he's been very effective doing that. His 8.2 yards per attempt passing is the most of his career. So is his 7 yards per carry and 66% completion percentage, all career best. He has significantly bounced back. In fact, I believe he's on pace for over 5,000 yards right now. I don't think it'll happen, but clearly he's been moving the chains very effectively. The touchdowns haven't been there as much as the yards, but ultimately he is playing really well. And the reason I wanted to bring him into this video, because he's been 8th, that's not phenomenal, that's not number 1. So it's just fairly good starter, still not a guy you're going to give up an arm and a leg for. But I want to talk about, can he continue this to help out the players around him, right? If he goes back to the way he was, that'll be a detriment to Barkley. That'll be a detriment to Sterling Shepard and all those other weapons. So, for, I guess, the value of that entire Giants offense, can he continue what he's been doing? One, I think so. You look at his struggles in his 2nd year for a quarterback who depends on his mobility to buy time because they have a bad offensive line. He also has a good arm and likes to throw it deep, so he's heavily dependent on his legs. He was banged up. It was very hard time with that ankle injury and everything going on. He was very slow and he struggled. And so this year, now he's healthy, he's playing better. That shouldn't be a super big surprise. Furthermore, this is not all sunshine and rainbows for him, right? When we look at it, it's not like everything has gone perfectly for him. In fact, there have been injuries to Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, their offensive lineman Andrew Thomas, their guard Ben Bredeson, and Saquon Barkley's recovering and still clearly getting some rust off in those first couple games. So, he's been playing really well. Again, despite the fact that things haven't been perfect, I've been really impressed with him, and I'm going to call him real. Now, I don't necessarily think he's going to finish inside the top 5 or the top 6, but for him to finish within the top 12 as a guy that you picked up off the waiver and you didn't give up anything for, yeah. So I'm going to go real there. What do you guys think? I know that's maybe a little bit much sometimes for some people.
Yeah, I love what you said there. So can he continue or not continue? Because how he does or doesn't do will affect those other players around him. They are interconnected, so I think he regressed last year undoubtedly. He was bad last year, but I think some of that regression was the fact that Saquon Barkley was out. What I mean by that, you know how you protect a young quarterback? You run the ball. Yeah. You set up play action, keep defenses honest. He didn't have that last year, so having Saquon back, I think by its very nature will keep him more effective.
And give him another weapon, because he's great in the passing game.
He's got a lot of weapons there, a lot of depth, undoubtedly. I won't say he has the best weapons, but as far as the depth of weapons, he's got 5 or 6 wide receivers that are all quality. two tight ends that are decent, and a running back that can catch the ball. But I'm a guy that's very conservative. I mentioned it before in the videos, and so I like to see a couple more games before I'm quickly to declare like he's back, he's ready. But I think we forget because last year was so brutal. He was a former first-round pick. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so in a dynasty league, I'm thrilled with Daniel Jones because he's looking like a quarterback of the future for you. In redraft leagues, I'm not there yet. Now, one thing that's been encouraging is that this hasn't been supported by just a couple big games. He's been consistent.
Yeah.
He's been consistently scoring 18 to 24 points, which is what I look for. I'd rather have consistency than boom or bust. That's always how I go. Now, a couple things that the stats don't always show is that right now, even though Saquon's coming back from an injury, teams are keying in on the run. He has one of the highest percentage of stacked boxes. That's when there's 8 or more defenders lining up. And so that's creating openings. Teams are daring Daniel Jones to throw, and they want to get beat that way. They want to get beat by his arm. Not by Saquon's legs, not even by Daniel Jones' legs. They're not expecting him to run, and I'm sure they'll look to take that away. So I think as teams start to navigate that and start to pay more attention as he proves himself a viable passer, then we'll see a whole new game plan. We might see more from Saquon Barkley. I think that's the best thing that could happen from this is that it creates more opportunity for Barkley and a little less attention on him. Now, I don't see Daniel Jones going anywhere up from here, so I would be fine, again, like I said, with trading him for top value. I don't think that it's going to get any better. I think that he could be, I think that he's going to finish outside the top 12. That's me. But I can see him being close to there and being another streaming option that you talked about for the right matchups, which in the NFC East, there's a lot of right matchups. So that's a good thing. But, yeah, I'm not going to say it's a mirage. I think he's taken a huge leap forward. I think he can continue to be successful. And I think that in the end, the best thing that this will do is create openings for Saquon Barkley more than anyone else.
So my guy is Deebo Samuel. Right now, he's second wide receiver scoring in PPR leagues. That's amazing. If you got him out there and you've been playing him, you got to be very happy. He's not just putting up fantasy stats. Pro Football Focus has him as 7th rated wide receiver. The quarterback rating when thrown to is 130. The guy's looking great. Now, last season he disappointed, and another thing I think that happens, they drafted Brandon Ayuk, taken in the first round. He played well, and because of that, his play last year, the injuries and performance of Brandon, a lot of people faded on Deebo this season. He wasn't a guy that a lot of people were talking about. He wasn't drafted really highly. But I think a lot of his struggles last year due to him being injured. He plays less than 100% off, and he only played 7 games, and they had quarterback issues. So you got to consider that. Now, I said his rookie year, if you look at how he plays, I don't know if you guys remember him because you guys are young, not old like me, but he reminds me a lot of Anquan Bolden. Remember that?
I remember old Anquan Bolden.
Anquan. What's that?
Anquan Olden?
Anquan
Bolden.
They making fun of me?
No, I just remember at the end of his career. I don't remember the beginning.
I've heard of him.
Young people. So, anyways, if you watch him at the beginning of his career when he was young, the guy was phenomenal. He played so physical, tough, and that's how this guy plays. Deebo Samuel, he's physical. He plays hard. He loves contact. Corners and safeties. If you try to arm tackle him, you're going to get in trouble. You don't have a chance to take this guy down. Now, what could hurt his production? One, because he's off the charts right now. One, quarterback issues. I don't care how good of a wide receiver, if you don't have a good quarterback, it's not happening. Trey Lance is a rookie. Even the coach came out and said, hey, the reason why we wouldn't have him starting at this point, he's just not there. And Jimmy Garoppolo, I've never been a big Jimmy Garoppolo fan. I don't know about you guys, but when they trade him over, I thought he was overrated. Any thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree.
Okay, so I'm not a big Jimmy Garoppolo fan. I think that lowers his ceiling. Although it is worth noting that right now, all of his stats in the first 4 weeks are from Jimmy Garoppolo being the quarterback there, and that hasn't hurt him regardless. So I think that maybe, as much as I'm not a huge fan of him, maybe he'll still be fine as far as production and fantasy. Another thing that can hurt his production is other weapons. One, some of those pass-catching backs are going to come back and get healthier, and we know that Shanahan loves using pass-catching backs there, so some targets will go to those guys. George Kittle's a stud, and he's not putting up George Kittle numbers. Those numbers are going to get better. At least I hope that they do because I got him in one of my dynasty leagues, so I hope he improves. And Brandon Ayuk is a solid not quarterback, but he's a solid wide receiver there. Probably the biggest concern I have, can he finish as a top 5 wide receiver? Well, if you look at top 5 wide receivers, they get fed a ton. In fact, they're usually the best option by far, and they get force-fed a lot. If you consider like DeAndre Hopkins when he was with the Texans, or Devonta Adams with Green Bay, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley last year, Michael Thomas' record-setting year, a lot of times to be top 5, you almost have to be in a team where like you're the only real option there and you get force-fed. And I do think he's got other weapons there, like Kittle and Ayuk and some other guys like that. Here's what I would say. I would say that I don't think his production's a fluke. I don't. I think he's a very talented wide receiver. but based on usage, I do think he's going to drop. I think he's going to easily finish as a strong wide receiver 12, and with the right breaks and the right things fall into place, I think he can crack the top 12, but he's definitely not going to be top 5.
Yeah.
But I do think that I don't think this is a fluke. But I do think you have to expect a little bit of regression statistically. But I do like this guy, and maybe I'm just blinded because I had a little bit of man crush on him the year he came out because he plays so much like the old guy, Anquan Boldin, that I knew back when you guys were young. But what are your thoughts on him? Once again, I think he's the real deal. I think he'll drop a little bit, but I think he's going to be a top wide receiver 1, probably closer to a higher wide receiver 2.
I have Mirage, get out of Deebo Samuel. Now, the biggest difference between him and Anquan Boldin, which I am familiar with, believe it or not, Anquan Boldin never was injured. Throughout most of his career, he was just always healthy. He was always consistent and never really missed out. Now, Deebo Samuel, his entire career is history, and like you said, he likes being physical.
Yeah.
And he's not going to back away from that.
So did Keenan Allen, though. He looked like he was never going to play a full season, and now suddenly the last 3 years he's been nothing but consistent.
But Keenan Allen had just, other than the ACL and MCL, I mean, he had a kidney laceration, for goodness sakes. Those hardly ever happen.
Now they brought that up.
No, I'm talking about Keenan Allen.
Oh, you are talking about Keenan Allen. Okay, I was confused. I'm like, so did Keenan Allen? That's crazy.
So
I'm really getting old.
How often does that happen?
Now, Deebo Samuel, he had I think it's called a Lisfranc fracture in his foot. He's had a lot of soft tissue issues, which are ones that we worry about. And again, if this was just a middle wide receiver 2, then I'd be happy with the production and keep going with it. But when you have a guy who you can capitalize on the number 3 ranked wide receiver in fantasy leagues right now, and you can flip him for a guy, I don't know, like a DeAndre Hopkins who's been a little lower, Stefon Diggs, those are the people that I would be going out and be thrilled to flop him for. Now, if you drafted him as your flex and you already have 1 and 2 guys, man, well, your team's probably in a pretty good position, and I'm keeping him because I think that he can sustain flex-worthy production, but he is not going to be a top a wide receiver 1 this year. I would take that to the bank.
Well, I think you asked a trick question here.
Yeah.
Real or Mirage? I would answer your question by asking you another question: redraft or dynasty?
I like him. Right now, I think I like him equal value. I think he's going to finish the year pretty solid. I think he's going to finish at least a high wide receiver 2, maybe a low end wide receiver 1. I don't think this is a fluke. I will say this. I do agree with you though. Nobody's ever off the trading market. Meaning that I don't care who you are. You got a hot player like that. You got to be willing to listen to offers. And if you get the right deal, then I don't care who it is. If it's Christian McCaffrey and a guy wants to give you the world, then you got to be willing to put aside your emotions and take that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. The people might be overreacting, but I suspect that most people right now see it as a mirage and therefore won't bite on a trade.
Yeah, unfortunately, although it's one of those things, and we hate the fantasy owners who offer us crappy trades, but it's just throw it out there. Sometimes if you got them, might as well give it a shot. But like I said, for me, it really depends on dynasty or redraft league. In a redraft league, I just very nervous about that quarterback situation. You have no idea what the rest of the season's going to look like. Either you play Garoppolo, and I'm not a big fan, or you play a rookie, Trey Lance, you don't know what you're going to get. But in a dynasty, you talk about a year and 2 years from now, if that quarterback situation is settled and it looks good, there's no reason I don't think he can't finish in the top 5. He really is that talented. And I'm a guy who I don't panic on the injuries because we've seen it with Keenan Allen, we've seen it with Dalvin Cook, where they get hurt, and then suddenly they're fine after a couple of years. I don't know. For me, I just try not to look into that too much.
I'm selling him in Dynasty too. And that's going to be an unpopular opinion. But people were all the rage about Brandon Ayuk this year, a 23-year-old wideout who has probably top 10 Dynasty trade value because of where he was from last season. And now look at him. I don't trust Kyle Shanahan. He's like that ex-girlfriend that broke my heart all those years ago. And I could never trust him again. He is just a coach that is going to play anyone who works hard in practice, and who that might be, we don't know.
What a terrible coach.
Yeah. No, he's great for real football purposes, but he's terrible for fantasy football purposes. Same reason that Trey Sermon's out and Elijah Mitchell is in and all the rage, but I don't want Deebo Samuel. I'm willing to trade him.
Yeah, I do agree, but the way you said there, it almost felt like, okay, so you're saying Brandon Ayuk going into this year, people were huge on the guy, and now his value dropped, and like, what's going on? He's not good all of a sudden. Well, what's one of the major things that dropped his value?
Deebo Samuel being back.
So
being healthy.
Being healthy and being that good, but
yeah.
All right, why don't we move on and get to our next guy?
All right, I picked two guys to kind of debate about near the end here, as far as we can talk about if their seasons are real or mirage. But who would you rather have right now? They were both waiver wire tight ends, but Dalton Schultz or Dawson Knox?
I'm all in on Schultz. I love that guy. I think Knox right now is doing well, but he's sustained out to touchdowns. That's not sustainable. I love Schultz. Where are you at?
No, I completely agree, Schultz. In fact, you called them waiver wire guys. We wouldn't dare have let Schultz be on the waiver wire market at this point in the season.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you, but I guess from a different perspective. So Dawson Knox is kind of the Robert Tonyan of this year, right? So everyone, after the first 4 games of last year, it's almost eerie how similar their stats are. So Dawson Knox, number 6 tight end right now, 15 catches for 144 yards and 4 touchdowns. And last year, Robert Tonyan, through 4 games when everyone went to pick him up, he had 13 catches for 173 yards and 5 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And so last year, Tonyan finished as tight end number 5, and everyone said, don't buy him this year. It's not sustainable. Don't do it. And it's happening. Mm-hmm. He's number 29 this year. He's droppable. You're not going to start him with any confidence. And part of his sustained value last year, and 7 of the last 8 games, he had a touchdown, right? It was every week. He was doing it there. And it seemed like there would be plenty of room for him. Now, Dawson Knox is a little bit different because he gets a lot more playing time than Tonyan did. He's usually above 80% snap share. And it seems like Allen really likes him in the red zone. And the other thing about the Bills' offense is that they don't have a good number 2 option. They've got a lot of above average options: Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Zach Moss in the red zone, Devin Singletary as a backup. But I'd say they're all on the same level. There's someone looking to break out after Stefon Diggs, and it quite possibly could be Dawson Knox.
So one of the things that I like right now with Dallas is their offense is doing a lot better. Last year, obviously, we know they moved the ball quite a bit. But they're going to a 2 running back set. I mean, Pollard right now is not as good as Ezekiel Elliott, but he's very good. And they're going to continue to give him carries. In fact, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of 30 carries per game as they switch that up. But what do you have if you're using both running backs constantly, run the ball more to take pressure off your quarterback, which I think they're doing a lot better and they're more efficient. You bring in more tight ends. So I think there's more opportunity, 2 tight end sets to be out there for an increased running game. Your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree. And you just look at it. For me, it's a question of looking at Dawson Knox, because when we evaluate the 2 guys, which would you rather have? Schultz has been great. Knox has also been great. But Knox feels like he's been on that team for a while. And I just wonder, again, it comes down to like, why didn't it click before? Why is it clicking now? And for me, it feels like it's clicking now because we've had just a bit of an off year for Stefon Diggs. And if Diggs gets back on track, and you've already got Cole Beasley, who is this PPR stud, and Emmanuel Sanders, who's had a 2-touchdown game, and you've actually got your running backs who have been able to find the end zone just fine. Like, it just doesn't feel like they need him to do that. Now, the difference, because it's a very similar situation with Dallas, they also have great weapons. The difference is Buffalo's defense is really good. They don't need 40 points to win. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, you probably do.
So I guess what I would say is it takes tight ends longer, right? That's just general consensus. It takes him longer. He's only 24, and he's been in the league 3 years. Yeah. And he's been with Josh Allen this last year. He actually went to see an eye specialist because he has problems seeing the ball when it comes in. And it might just be that that's really helped his game. Now, Dalton Schultz, he's someone who I want if I'm looking for a stable floor, which is all important with tight ends, especially after you get from Kelsey to Waller. I mean, I don't even want to include Hawkinson and Kittle at this point because they're just inconsistent. So after that, it is a wasteland of tight ends. Yeah. Dalton Schultz might be your saving grace, and last year he was number 11 with Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci as his quarterbacks. Yeah. And now he's the last option in an offense that has Elliott and Pollard, as you said, that has Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb that are always going to be keyed in. The last people that the defense is looking at is Dalton Schultz. So it comes down to who you want. Do you want a higher ceiling, which I believe is Dawson Knox, who I think, if he sustains it, could be a Robert Tonyan of this year and finish as the 5th overall tight end, or a Dalton Schultz, who's probably going to stay right in that 6 to 12 range and have 6 catches and 40 yards every week, and that's great for tight ends in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one thing you called it a wasteland, is that what you said about tight ends?
Yes.
And it is, and because it is that way, what I'd say right now is both of those tight ends are tight end ones. Yeah. Because what else you can have out there? So no matter where you might flip them or field them, I think you both have to feel like those are guys you're going to start.
Absolutely.
It's a tight end wasteland.
Here we go. I like it. Don't stop now.
We're waiting
stop
for
it,
it.
stop
We're just getting excited. So
All right, so the last guy I want to get into is Najee Harris. And I'm actually going to be honest with you guys. When I picked to talk about him in this video, I hadn't started my research. I just asked him and said, we're going to see what we get. Because I was just really curious about this. He has had a very confusing year. So right now, he is the RB5 overall in fantasy scoring amongst running backs. He's been great, except 3.4 yards per carry on the year is pretty bad. And he's only scored 2 touchdowns. So, the question is, can he keep that production up? Can he still be a top guy, a top 12 or even top 6 fantasy running back when the yards per carry and the touchdowns aren't there? Let's get into it. The first thing I want to say is the touchdowns not being there is both good and bad. We know how fickle touchdowns are, and so, hey, they're not here today. Maybe they'll be there tomorrow, and that can even really help them out even more. And then we got to address the offensive line. The Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line is pretty bad right now, and they have struggled. But furthermore, I think Ben Roethlisberger's struggles have really exacerbated every issue that they have on that offense, where it's just, let's be honest, guys, no matter how great your offense is, with the wrong quarterback, simply getting a first down can be difficult, let alone stringing together drives, scoring touchdowns, and really putting it together a whole productive game. But before I continue on, I got a lot of things to say. What are you guys thinking just right off the bat?
yeah, I had the guy in a dynasty. I think he's got a ton of talent. He works hard. He's great. Ben Roethlisberger came on and said that of all the guys he's played at running back, he might be the best ever. And that's just not Le'Veon Bell. That's Jerome Bettis.
Mm-hmm.
So it says an awful lot. I think he's really good. I think he's being hindered right now by a bad offense and a bad offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. I think this is Ben Roethlisberger's last year.
Yeah.
I do. But I do think that he's going to play better. That they're going to make some corrections. They're going to improve. And I think he'll subsequently see an increase. I think what you're going to see is a good year based on volumes where he's not going to be very efficient running the ball. But that's my take.
This is real. I am all in on Najee Harris. All in.
So I'll just say it. I think it's real as well, right? Maybe he doesn't finish as 5, but I don't think it's going to fall out of RB1. Maybe he drops to 8 or whatever. But let's break it down. It's not just that, and you said it. Ben Roethlisberger called him the best running back he's ever worked with. But you know what? They also said that he worked so hard in the offseason that coaches had to kick him off the field. They also said that from day one, he looked like a veteran who understood the playbook and knew what needed to be done. That's great. I mean, sure, running back is not the position where you need to be the most intelligent, but it matters, and it makes a difference, and it gives confidence to your team around you. Furthermore, there's no competition there. You know that the second most carries is by their wide receiver. The only running back there to have carries other than Harris has 3 carries for 1 yard. No competition.
Wow. And yeah, I mean, other than maybe a standard league, a standard non-PPR, I think he will struggle to crack even the top 10. And there's not usually such a large disparity when you look at running backs between the ones that are efficient in PPR and non-PPR. But this might be one of those times that okay, I can see trading him in that, but PPR, this guy is a gold mine. I don't see any way that he doesn't finish in the top 5, barring injury. I think I'm in on him. I would make a bet that he finishes as a top 5 running back. This is, if we're talking about Big Ben's inefficiencies, well, what's one way that he does it? He checks down. His average depth of target is one of the lowest in the league. That's why Deontay Johnson feeds, and we're all in on Deontay Johnson. We're saying, go get him. He's going to have an efficient year if he's not injured. But why aren't we saying the same thing about Najee Harris? And a lot of people are, but 14 catches on 19 targets.
Yeah, just from a couple games ago.
That's not going to go anywhere. I mean, he's still going to have, if he has anywhere from 5 to 10, he's already an ultra value at the PPR position. And he can't get any worse as a runner, I don't think. I don't think it's going to get worse than 3.2 yards per carry. And I can't see the offense having less efficiency. So I think that all signs are pointing up, and he's already that successful. Man, I want all the shares of Najee Harris I can get.
Well, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, so I made a trade. I talked about it before we did the video here. So I had Najee Harris and I had Mark Andrews tight end. I traded for George Kittle and I got Edwards-Helaire back. I'm not a big Edwards fan. I think George Kittle's got a huge size, or we call it huge ceiling. I think he's very talented. Yep. I believe that statistically I'm going to win that bet this year. I think they're going to outscore. But I think long term, Najee Harris is the guy. He's going to be, if you're in a dynasty league, he is the must-have running back. He's going to be an all-world stud, undoubtedly.
Here's what I like most about him. And you talked about it a little bit. His ability in the passing game, he's a dual threat. He gets PPR points. He keeps himself on the field. He's just dangerous. In fact, he's on pace for 110 catches and 756 receiving yards. And let's remember, even the great receiving Christian McCaffrey got better 3 years in a row when he entered the league. Running backs will continue to develop, and so this might not even be his peak words are hard. His peak in pass catching ability, but there's something that makes him more dangerous. Look at the other pass catching backs in the league, like say Christian McCaffrey. What is their one downfall? They're usually a little bit smaller. That's not a problem for Najee Harris, who is 6'1", 232 pounds. Now he might only be 15 pounds heavier than Christian McCaffrey, but one with that height, we call it natural weight. Doesn't mean that he's a shorter back who's forced muscle on, and that can get kind of awkward and like David Boston, but two, that extra 10 pounds, that makes a huge difference. I mean, really, any athlete out there knows if you had an extra 10 pounds of muscle, that means the world. So this is a guy that can get it done on the ground, won't have injury issues, and somehow he is one of the best dual threat running backs in the league. Oh yeah, and we didn't even mention the fact that if you're worried about this offense, I get it. There's concern there. But, the Steelers and their, Mike Tomlin, they've kind of had a great offense for many, many years. I trust them.
Yeah.
So the last guys that I have, I think the last guys we're going to talk about here is we're supposed to take one guy each, and I kind of combined two, so I cheat a little bit. But I'm going to call this one Tier 1 flops. I want to talk about Stefon Diggs, who's currently the 19th wide receiver in scoring, and then DeAndre Hopkins, who's the 25th wide receiver in scoring there. Once again, that puts them at the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 category. Yet they were both drafted in many leagues in the first round, definitely drafted to be top 5 wide receivers. They were average draft position. One was 3rd, one was 4th. Before I get into some things there, are you guys a little bit surprised, shocked? Do you guys own them in any leagues?
I don't own them in any leagues, more so because of the position that I drafted in. I would have loved to have them both. I'd say I'm not as surprised on DeAndre Hopkins, more surprised on Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. I'm the opposite. I really, to be honest, I kind of expected a big drop-off from Diggs, but the Hopkins thing has really surprised me, and maybe that's more because I've been just also surprised with how much Christian Kirk has stepped up. But I don't know. Why don't you continue on? I don't actually have a whole lot of thoughts on it. I think they're going to rebound to be fine, but you're the one who did the research, so why don't you tell us what we're expecting?
Okay, so the question is, can they climb to wide receiver 1 status again? Well, in order to ask that or answer that question, we also have to wonder, for them to climb, guys have to drop.
Yeah.
So are there any guys ahead of them that I think are going to drop? And I think there are a few guys. A couple off the top of my head, a few that I would mention is the guy I talked about earlier, Cordarrelle Patterson. I think he's going to drop statistically. Another one is Brandon Cooks. I think he's a great volume play. We talked about him. His numbers are good right now, but man, that quarterback situation is a mess. Davis Mills looks horrible back there.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. And then Marquez Brown, I think, will drop right now because, one, the type of offense he's in, they're run heavy. He's had limited targets if you base on past trends. And they're about to get Bateman back, the first-round wide receiver that they drafted there. So I think those guys right there in the top 12 will drop out. So I think there's that. Both Diggs and Hopkins are undeniably really good wide receivers. If I look at that, I think Hopkins has a better resume and he's more talented of the two. Now let's look at the ages. Hopkins is 29 and Diggs is about to be 28. So as far as wide receiver age goes, I think it'd be premature to say that that's a regression based on age at this point. I don't know if you guys agree or not.
Statistically, after their age 27 season is when wide receivers start to decline.
Although that's confusing. We saw how old Steve Smith was, and he was still producing. And here's the bigger one.
Anomaly.
Maybe. Here's the bigger one. Do you know there is a really great wide receiver, one of the best of all time, who didn't have their first 1,000-yard receiving year until they were 27?
Shut up. No way.
Do you know who that is?
I don't know. We live in, we're by the way, we record in Minnesota right now. You guys Vikings fan?
Yeah.
Me too. Who was it?
Larry Fitzgerald?
Chris Carter.
Chris Carter.
Chris Carter didn't have his first 1,000-yard season until he was 27. So there are guys out there that do it. I mean, there might be a drop-off, but it is not nearly as fast, for example, as a running back, where it drastically drops off for them.
Yeah, i.e. Todd Gurley.
Yeah, so I think that age is not an issue at this point. They're both still in the same offense with the same quarterback that put him in the top 5 to begin with, so that's good. We have to ask that question. What they did last year, was that a statistical anomaly, I should say. It's been one of those long days for me, so sorry about that. Diggs, I think what he did last year was a little bit of an anomaly, a little bit. Now, he did have another year where he had 102 catches. He's had 3 seasons over 1,000 yards. But I would say that what he did last year, 126 catches, was not normative for him.
Yeah.
That's not normal for him. In fact, he averaged, I think, before they take away those 2 seasons, around 75 catches per season. Whereas Hopkins, he's had 4 seasons over 1,000 yards. I'm sorry, 4 seasons over 100 catches per season and 6 seasons over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
So I think for Hopkins, that's a little more normal for him. That's not an abnormal year. What he did last year didn't shock anybody, did it? We're kind of like, yeah, that's Hopkins being Hopkins.
Yeah.
Where when Diggs did it, we're kind of like, wow, this guy came out of nowhere. He really was amazing. And the other thing I think we need to consider is Diggs is not that far from wide receiver 1 status. He's 19, so you only got to go 7 spots to improve. So it's not that far. If you feel disappointed, he hasn't been bad.
Yeah.
Okay, not bad at all. Hopkins, on the other hand, he's outside wide receiver 2. In fact, currently, based on a 12-team size league, he's a wide receiver 3. That's shocking. Now he's got Kyle Murray, who's developed into a very good quarterback. And that's good and bad for him. One, it's good because, well, that makes him a good quarterback. I mean, his production play won't dip. He won't have major issues against matchups, against good defenses. But here's the problem with him developing into a good quarterback. Often quarterbacks, when they develop to a talented quarterback, they have better target selection. They spread the ball around. They stop being less predictable. They tend to not force it as much, so that could hurt his distribution or target distribution a little bit there. Also, Christian Kirk. Very underrated. They get the rival of A.J. Green, who, by the way, A.J. Green, when you go back 5 years ago, this guy was phenomenal, and he's got gas in his tank. And the other one is Rondale Moore, which, by the way, a little bragging on us here. Back when he had that huge week, and we did our waiver wire video, and we said, you got to pick this guy up. He's very talented, but you need to temper your expectations. And I know a lot of people disagreed with that, but the last 2 weeks, what has he done?
Nothing.
Nothing. So anyways, but he's still talented. And so I think, that, along with the fact that Kyler Murray can use his legs, I think it might lower his volume. But here's what I think as far as Hopkins go. As the year gets deeper and the games become more important and more meaningful, he's by far and away their best weapon. He's impossible to contain. You can't even double team this guy to stop him. And so those numbers are going to come up. His production, barring an injury, will trend up. Now, it's going to be hard to overcome the fact that he has a slow start. And that's 4 games he's not going to be able to get back there. But he may not finish in the top 10, but I expect him to finish around that 12 area, which puts him right in the bubble of wide receiver 1.
Well, and his season totals at this point don't matter because what's in the past is in the past. But if he plays as a wide receiver 1 the rest of the year and he still gets hurt by his start, who cares? Again, you can't look back. You got to look forward.
Yeah, if we're going to look at what's changed for the two, because last year there are a lot of similarities, but you just touched on it. Arizona upgraded their skill position players in full. A.J. Green, Rondale Moore, and then you also added James Conner to the backfield, who's been great the last 2 weeks, which I didn't expect that coming. You look at Buffalo, and they exchanged John Brown for basically the same player in Emmanuel Sanders. So there hasn't been a change there. And Josh Allen is the same quarterback, if not a year more mature. So I have a lot more confidence in Stefon Diggs. And I was looking at ESPN ratings right now, and 2 teams, or it showed a stat that of the teams that are struggling the most and have the worst records right now, and 2 commonalities on most of them are teams that have Dalvin Cook, which is understandable, and it's teams that have DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
Which for whatever reason, that seems odd to me that it would be so drastic. But he has majorly disappointed. Now, I think that he will be fine, and I think that he'll finish as a low-end wide receiver 1. And I don't think that you should trade him because you're not going to get very good value. So I would encourage people to go out and buy low on DeAndre Hopkins. But as far as what he has been for a long stretch of his career, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the first year that he shows a little bit of regression, maybe doesn't hit that 1,000-yard mark, and maybe has under 100 catches.
Stefon Diggs, the last guy there, and then we'll say this. One, a lot of people are surprised, but if you follow us here, we had said from the beginning of the year that we expect a regression. We thought that last year was a career year, and I still believe that. I think he's a good wide receiver. Now, even starting slow, he's still doing just fine. So I think he'll finish the year probably around, once again as a wide receiver 1, but he's not going to be top 5. But that's not surprising. We've been saying that for a couple months. So that's kind of where I'm at with Stefon Diggs. Do you think he gets back in the top 5, or is this it for him?
I do. I'm gonna put my neck out there. I'm gonna say top 5. I think that he'll be just fine. I think other wide receivers, as you said, will fall off, including Deebo Samuel. I'm putting that out there too. But yeah, Stefon Diggs, he's got the target share still. He's just got to fall into the end zone a couple of times and have a couple more competitive games, which they've had an easy strength of schedule thus far, and that's not going to continue. So yeah, Stefon Diggs will be fine. I'm happy with him. I know that it's hard to wait, but he's going to blow up here pretty soon.
All right, so should have been 9. I think then it'd be, 11 players we talked about,
You're
but
welcome.
the bonus
It was
players.
free for you guys. It was free.
Actually, everything we do is free, and they say you get what you pay for.
That's why you have
Ouch.
to like and subscribe if you
Yes.
enjoy the content.
Yeah, no, of course. Just like, subscribe, and leave a comment, because the more you support these videos, the more motivated we are to do a good job. But thank you so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and God bless.